Welcome back, Algebra 1. We are going to continue factoring today with the x method. Today we will have a negative constant and a leading coefficient equal to 1. Remember, to multiply to a negative number, the factors must have different signs, one positive and one negative. So the past couple days when we've been factoring, we've had the same signs, so both positive or both negative. Today we are going to have one of each. Let's look at our examples. Remember, to factor, we write it as a multiplication problem, so we are going to still be using our two sets of parentheses. This time we are going to be multiplying to a negative 30 and adding to a negative 1. Remember, if we see a negative x, that's really a negative 1x. So let's fill in our x to organize our numbers here. Multiply to negative 30, add to negative 1. So when we look at our factors of 30, we have to remember that one of them needs to be positive, one of them needs to be negative. And we did do this on Monday when we just talked about our numbers. We didn't necessarily factor with them yet. One positive, one of them negative. Now, one way we could shorten our list is to think about if we are going to be adding up to a negative number, then our bigger number needs to be the one that's negative. So I'm just going to kind of stop making this list over here where the smaller number's negative and keep going with the list where my bigger number is negative. Let's see, that should do it. Okay, if you need to see all of them for both lists, that's fine. But if we're adding up to a negative, our bigger number needs to be the negative number. So the pair here that's going to add up to negative 1 would be positive 5 and negative 6. When you write your answer, make sure you're putting the correct sign with the correct number. The 5 was positive, the 6 was negative. So this would be my answer. If you want to write it the other way, you need to make sure that the 6 is still a negative and that the 5 is still a positive. Okay, either way works for me as long as you have the correct sign with the correct number. All right, let's look at number 2. This time we are multiplying to negative 10 and adding up to positive 3. Since we are adding up to a positive number in the middle, positive 3, we know that our bigger factor needs to be positive. So if you want to make yourself a little note, the bigger factor needs to have the same sign as the middle coefficient. All right, I added that note up to the top here. So if you need to write that down, the bigger factor must have the sign from the middle coefficient. Middle. There we go. All right, so when we look at our factors of 10, we have 1 and 10, we have 2 and 5. Our bigger factor must have the sign from the middle. So our bigger factor has to be positive. That means our smaller factors are going to be negative. So we look at this, we think, which one of these is going to add up to a positive 3? Hopefully you see that that would be negative 2 and positive 5. So x minus 2 times x plus 5. Again, if you flip them around, make sure you keep the correct sign with the correct number. The 5 must be positive, the 2 must be negative. All right, let's try a couple more. Again, we're going to do 6 total examples in this video today. On number 3, we are multiplying to negative 21. We are adding to a positive 4. So when we make our factor list or look at our factor list, we know that the bigger factor is going to need to be positive, sign from the middle. So our bigger ones are positive. That makes our smaller ones negative. The pair that's going to add up to a positive 4 would be negative 3 and positive 7. So our answer is x minus 3 times x plus 7. As always, if you've got questions, something about this seems weird or isn't making sense, please let me know. Email me, comment, something. You can always double check yourself if you were to double distribute this back out. So if you distributed the x and then you distributed a negative 3, if you double distribute and combine like terms, you should end up with the original problem. If you don't, then you didn't do it right. All right, on number 4, we are trying to multiply to negative 16. We are adding up to negative 6. This time, our middle coefficient is negative, which means our bigger factor needs to be negative. So 1 times negative 16, 2 times negative 8. 4 and negative 4, they're the same, right? So that one, of course, it's not going to be, because that would just add up to 0. Hopefully you can see the pair that's going to add up to negative 6 is 2 and negative 8. Again, the bigger factors were negative because we had to add up to a negative. So my answer would be x plus 2 times x minus 8. All right, we've got 2 more examples to get through. Let's look at 5 and 6. On number 5, we are trying to multiply to negative 5 and add up to negative 4. Again, if our middle coefficient is negative, our bigger factor is negative. So 1 times negative 5 is really our only option. Okay, the other option would be negative 1 times 5, but in that case, our bigger factor isn't negative. So hopefully you can see there's just one option here. We don't even really need to make a decision. So x plus 1 times x minus 5. Again, on any of these problems, if you wanted to rearrange your parentheses, I would be fine with that, even if I haven't shown it on all of them. But you need the correct sign to be with the correct number. Last example before you get to your assignment. Here's my x. I'm multiplying to negative 6. And I'm adding up to a positive 1. Again, remember, if it's just plus x, it's plus 1x. So if we look at our factors, we need to make sure our bigger factor is going to be positive. So we could have negative 1 times 6, or we could have negative 2 times 3. The factor pair that would add up to a positive 1 is negative 2 and 3. So that helps us fill in our factors. X minus 2, x plus 3. You're probably getting familiar with the way this is working. There will be a PDF of the homework posted and a Google form where you need to submit your answers. As always, email me with any questions, please.